What's up, freaks? This is just me, and today we're talking about the hands clasped most muscular, one of the most popular, most muscular variations. And of course, the only pose I'm going to be showcasing this time is obviously the hands clasped most muscular, so no hands together variation, which is very similar to it. And it's also a great pose, so I might do a video on that most muscular in the future. I hope so, but not today. The bodybuilders featured here have to be clasping one of their hands on their wrist, and the pose can look a little different from person to person, but only a subtle difference is gonna occur, like in these three pictures. The arms can be a little higher or lower, but not a big deal. So, let me start the entries now. And this pose is not one of the older ones, to my knowledge. It wasn't really around during the golden era and the 70s. I think it was first popularized in the 80s, among others by this man, 8-time Mr. Olympia, Lee Haney. Totally awesome, as always. Not a bad pose for him. His legs and also delts and arms don't really match the remarkable pec development, but other than that, I think it's a pretty solid pose. And he's one of the pioneers, so great job on this pose. And another Olympia contender executing this pose in the 80s was Lee Labrada. And for being a smaller bodybuilder, and I would say one of the pioneers too, he looks absolutely amazing. It's his sharp separation and great balance and completeness and aesthetics that make this pose work for him. That's a really nice hands clasp, if you ask me. And we are going into the late 80s and early 90s for Gary Stridham. This is a great most muscular too. The full pecs and big delts, he was known for that. He's got good separated muscle and a lot of mass, but I find this most muscular really aesthetic too, despite being very powerful as well. And now I have a lesser known bodybuilder. His name is Dennis Newman. And look at the development of this guy's shoulders and arms. He looks out of this world, absolutely no slouch. I was really surprised to see that this entry is actually one of the better hands class most musculars, considering I have never heard of this bodybuilder before. So give it up for Dennis Newman, who you might not have known before this video, so you do now. Once again, an amazing pose for him. And this is the 80s and 90s bodybuilder mass monster Victor Richards. And look at him as well. He looks badass too. Super huge and developed everywhere. He's got a big, thick chest and arms are big too. He's got a sharp midsection, a huge upper traps. He has as well. I noticed that. So a really strong pose. He looks like a freak overall. I really like him in this pose. Too bad he didn't compete more. Okay, and this is a proper killer, most muscular, by the heavily arm muscled Mike Matarazzo. So not only did he have his crazy calves, which you can still see in his most muscular pose, that's quite crazy, a real standout feature, but he also had big arms. They don't look as mind-blowing from this angle as they do in the front double biceps, if you ask me, but they still look pretty awesome, and Mike looks impressive overall. And next up, this is our favorite 90s Sonny Schmidt. He just looks great as well in this position. Look at those straps, they look very meaty, and the strided chest definitely looks very good in this pose. I do think though he lacks a bit of side delts and arm development. That would make this pose look much better and way more complete, but nevertheless, this is a pretty nice one. And this is another 90s bodybuilder, Aaron Baker, perhaps a little forgotten, but he doesn't deserve that at all. Look at that physique. He looks massive and he's got a good chest and great traps too, like we saw with Sonny Schmidt. So all these 90s guys look awesome in this pose. But This is Milos Sarchev, who is looking very strong with that separated midsection and full chest. He's got very good delts too, so this pose suddenly looks much more complete and competitive. Very nicely balanced and strong overall. But this aesthetic 90s guy, Charles Claremont, is not intimidated by that at all. Look at his most muscular pose. He looks top tier. He has got brilliant separation all over his body, and he looks to be in super good condition, which is very impressive. His chest delts and midsection and the arms look awesome. I really like this pose aesthetically. He hits it very well, so this is one of my personal favorites, I would say. But here we have another super complete pro from the 90s era, Chris Cormier, who was a good competitor for sure. And once again, his chest is very well built and developed, as well as the abs indeed. His quads also look very good, some feathering there, and it complements the upper body really well. And he's got great arms, so a nice pose. And we can't forget Flex Wheeler. He's got a great execution, and he is also complete. He's got the great quads, the midsection, chest, shoulders, with some visible striations. That's very impressive, and some big arms. This pose can surely be counted among the best the previous century had to offer. And this is one of his contemporaries, Sean Ray, who was packed with clearly defined muscle all over his physique. He had every muscle group intact, and it shows in this most muscular pose. He's got it all. The legs, midsection, chest, arms. He might look a little narrow up top, indeed. Partially, I would say it's because of his execution, which is maybe not ideal. But he isn't the widest guy. Other than that, it's a very beautiful pose for him. And another shorter bodybuilder from the 19th era was, of course, Lee Priest, the blonde myth, who had some amazing features, such as his abs and his striated quadriceps. But what really stands out are, of course, the arms of Lee Priest. His biceps and triceps measurement must have been incredible for his height. Definitely some of the best and strongest arms in history, if not just the one set of guns. And the forearms too. So that makes for a really powerful, most muscular pose. And we are still going on in the 90s. They were really full of talent, weren't they? But now, from the smaller, shorter physiques to the giants. This is mass monster Jean-Pierre Fuchs, and he really surprised me in this most muscular pose because he looks really incredible. His chest looks super broad and fantastic with great separation too. The delts are so well built and have some striations, and the midsection doesn't look bad at all, so this is an awesome pose for Jean-Pierre Fuchs. Now, this mass monster, Nasser El Somebody, looks amazing too, so full and big, with awesome trap development, great chest, and great delts too. He's a little bit blocky, but he's got well separated abs, and he looks powerful. So a very strong pose for Nasser. And yet another massive 90s bodybuilder, the Freakenstein, Paul Delat, who looks super freaky, obviously, with those tall traps that look like they're gonna jump off him any minute. And those big arms, as you can see. He's got brilliant delt development and the full vascular striated chest, but still a very tight waistline and midsection and a great lower body. So a fabulous package on Paul Delat. But here he is, the real king of the hands clasped most muscular pose, Kevin Levrone, the Maryland Muscle Machine. His traps look amazing in this pose. Look how they slope down into his boulder big delts, which of course sort of make or break this pose. They are quite crucial for it. And Kevin does have them in spades. He's got huge arms too. The chest isn't as big, but it doesn't look underdeveloped to me. It fits into this pose well, and it works. So why not? What's wrong with it? Then the midsection looks good too. Just an amazing package. Let's have another look at Kevin because he is so famous for this pose. He definitely popularized it too. His upper body again superb, and the lower body it is a little weaker, especially towards the end of his career, but it still works. He was in great condition and had a big amount of mass, so he nailed this pose. But here's this gentleman too, 8-time Mr. O, Ronnie the King Coleman, who had a stronger lower body and a great upper body too, with a stronger chest than Kevin Ronnie, with all due respect to him. So I'm not saying Ronnie's pose is better, because Kevin is just so iconic, it's hard to beat him, but sure, both of them were top 5 of all time easily. At least they are among my top 5 hands clasped most musculars. And I think we need to look at him again. The traps, shoulders, backs, arms, legs, all on this guy. Everything is brilliantly developed. He looks massive and shredded too. That's really impressive by Ronnie. Be sure to let me know what you think about the King's pose here. Is it better than his crab, most muscular? I personally like it better, for instance. And here is the 2000s giant gone through Sleorcamp. He doesn't look that well put together and that composed in this pose. I'm sure you can see that. I mean, it's not very aesthetic, but that was never his claim to fame anyway. However, take a look at his chest. It's very full and strided. That catches anyone's eye for sure. He's got round boulder shoulders and those biceps, he was known for them. So not the best balance or flow, but a good shot, I would say. And here is the super complete Dexter Jackson, who had no problem having all his muscle groups developed at a similar rate. He was from the 2000s for the most part, and this pose is not his trademark like the crab position most muscular, but it still looks bloody good on him, I gotta say. He looks so cut and strided and sharp, as usual, but also quite full to me in this pose with those great delts, backs, arms. They also look very full, but his stomach is small, so he looks very aesthetic. And here is another 2000 bodybuilder, Dennis James, of course, the menace. Menacing here with his hands clasped most muscular pose. He was very massive, in fact, with a great chest as well as delts and traps. And that's really the recipe for a good pose here. But as you may notice, Dennis always looked much fuller and more impressive off stage than on it, so his off-season pose looks just unreal compared to his stage photos. And I also wanted to showcase Joel Stubbs because he had a really broad chest and super wide shoulders, unreal back too. But now we have a front pose, so his upper body looks absolutely amazing. It's super big, just crazy. The width of the clavicles and the torso look really unbelievable to me. And he's got nice delt striations too, I noticed that, as well as a nice chest. Too bad his legs were not nearly as large, but anyway, he looks freaky. And here is a competitor from the 2010s and 2000s, from the open class and then 202 class and then 212. His name is David Henry. He's got very good traps and shoulders and arms in this pose. He's very powerfully built, even though a shorter physique. I don't mind a shorter physique in a pose like this whatsoever. I think it looks great. He's got a full upper body, great muscle bellies. I find that very aesthetically pleasing, so a great shape on him. But here is the real master of the 3D muscle bellies. Of course, the gift, Phil Heath. I had to include him in this video. Perhaps the fullest muscle bellies displayed in this pose ever. He really looks unreal, and he's so incredibly complete with all the muscle groups well developed. Apart from the chest being a little more scrunched because of the narrower clavicles, he looks like $1,000,000. That's why he won all those Olympias, right? So, another look at him in this position. The hands clasp of Mr. Phil Heath was really crazy full and puffy. The delts are absolutely world class, so are the triceps and forearms. The midsection still looks alright, and the quads are very massive as well, so this pose just exudes power. But that's enough. Now let's move on. This is someone you might know and might not know. It's Zach Khan. He is from the 2010s and he looks amazing in this pose. His pecs are great and the delts and arms are amazing too. He looks very 3D and bubbly, maybe a little bit like The Gift. I mean, his whole upper body is absolutely brilliant, amazing. So a really good pose for Zach Khan. He impressed me very much, I have to admit. And I am not very familiar with him, so I will definitely remember his name after seeing these most musculars. And this is the 2010s era late great Dallas McCarver with his crazy boulder delts. Look, they are completely dominating this most muscular for him. The shoulders are just way too huge and round. That's really unreal. And he's got big calves too. And pretty good quads on this dude as well. Possibly really not the most balanced bloke in this pose, but he looks so freaky and really big, and it was a strong pose for him. Rest in peace, Dallas McCarver. I always say this because I really wish for these deceased guys and girls to be respected and remembered. But now here is another genetic miracle from the 2010s who was a brilliant competitor, Justin Compton. Look at those delts, they are gigantic, and his shoulder width is crazy as well. And his arms, traps, and lower body. I mean, look at the quad sweeps. I hope this guy is doing good now. He is absolutely brilliant in this pose, quite undoubtedly. It's too bad that he couldn't make it further and place a little bit better throughout his bodybuilding career. This is Cedric McMillan. He is an aesthetic but also big current physique, and this is a good pose for him too. His chest, delts, arms, and the overall package are really amazing. The picture on the left looks very impressive in particular. The others are not bad either, so well done. And I find 2018 Mr. Olympia, the unfortunately late Sean Roden, looks a tad similar to Cedric in this pose, with great traps, and really what impresses me the most are the quads. They look very full here in this pose. Definitely a great physique. Not the best pose for Sean, but good nevertheless. And the guy will be missed forever, for sure, because he meant a lot to the bodybuilding community. So, rest in peace as well. And now we have some young blood here. Rafa Brandao has quite an awesome hands clasp pose as well. The separation of his body is pretty great, even though he could be more cut, possibly. But his structure looks fairly good and the execution is masterful. He's got great shoulders and chest combo, and those aesthetic quads help the overall effect too, making the pose flow really well. And Michael Lockett's most muscular isn't bad either. He's got great muscle bellies, almost full to bursting in the delts and pecs, looking very good. And he has a wonderful 8-pack, so a solid pose, even though he could probably execute it a little bit better. he looks a little lopsided in some of these pictures. And here is a guy that's a force in the IFBB Elite Pro League, Michael Criso. He has an awesome physique, and he does have great genetics and brilliant development everywhere. His delts and his quads too. But what really impresses me are his chest and the arms too. So great physique. I hope he will compete at the Olympia stage one day, even though I don't find it very probable and likely. Anyway, now we have William the Conqueror Bonac too. William is a stocky bodybuilder who is very muscular, and that's a recipe for a good most muscular pose, if you ask me. He looks very full, again somewhat reminiscent of Phil Heath, if you ask me. He is crazy separated too, and complete. He isn't missing a single muscle group. Look at the rounded delts, ridiculously big biceps. The chest looks pretty good to me as well, and the lower body stacks up really good. So this is one of my personal favorite hands clasped most muscular, I think. And next up, another nowadays competitor, Hunter Brada. I think he looks pretty good too in this pose. He hits the pose well, I gotta give him credit for that. And he's got pretty good delt development and great limbs, the arms and quads, calves too. Just looks good on him. Not one of the best poses, in my opinion, but still a really good pose. That's why he is in this video. But you know what? Maybe he should not have beaten this guy, Nick Walker, at the Olympia 2021. In this pose, Nick sure looks very good, and he's an absolute beast, just incredibly muscle-bound and so thick. He's got absolutely huge delts and arms. The chest is not too bad, even though it needs to be brought up. And he's got a separated midsection and a lower body that can rival any bodies in the game today. And overall, great vascularity and conditioning and a lot of mass. So I think he is really gonna knock this pose out of the park in the upcoming years. And now let's jump to the nowadays 212 class to witness Ahmad Ashkanani hitting his most muscular in the hands clasped way, and he's really thick and pretty aesthetic at the same time. He could use a little more delt development, but other than that, I mean, his chest looks really unbelievably strong here in these pictures, and so do the little blocks of abs that he's got. His arms are also crazy, so to conclude, not the most complete, but one of the most impressive bodybuilders to do this pose currently, I would say, surely. And here I also chose 7-time 212 Mr. Olympia flex James Lewis as another 212er with a nice hands clasp pose. Perhaps not the thickest chest and the best midsection you have ever seen. Definitely not, to be honest, but solid delts and arms as well as the wheels. So what I think is that Flex looks quite impressive. He is no slouch in this pose, even though it's not one of his strongest poses. And moving on to the classic physique, where the hands clasped most muscular is not the most popular pose, but still I was able to find this guy, Danny Yunin, and he chose to hit this pose a few times, even though it's not a mandatory, so he looks very good in it, so I included him. His upper body is great, I like his arms, and I really like the quads in this position too. He looks quite beast-like, especially for a classic physique competitor. I wish more guys hit this pose nowadays from the classic physique. I think it will look pretty decent. And that's actually all for today. These were all the entries. So let me know all the others that I might have forgotten to include in this video. Also accept my sincerest apologies for that, because anyone noteworthy, of course, deserves to be included. And you can also comment if you like the most muscular hands clasped variation the most, or which is your favorite one of the most musculars? This pose just looks so cool, I think. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to watch some hands clasped most muscular videos, and also like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day.